If you're nice to me now, I'll be nice to you throughout the evening. If you linger me now, hi guys, there are two seats right here. Yeah, so thank you very much for coming to this evening's Blogger Forum. The hashtag for this event is Bloggers Forum, hashtag Bloggers Forum. So please tweet about it, put it on Facebook, on your Instagram, so that we can get this conversation spread as widely as possible. And we're very lucky today to have a very distinguished panel. We have Engineer Leo Burrett from the Communications Authority of Kenya, the Director of Multimedia Services. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have our regulator in the building today. We have Abdallah Omari, the General Manager of KENIC, the Kenya Network Information Center, the people behind the infrastructure that a lot of the technology happens on. Thank you very much for joining us today. We have my good friend Jerry Wangari, one of the most foremost bloggers that we have in Kenya today, and a key member of the Bloggers Association of Kenya. Yeah. And we have another one of our friends who I'm sure is familiar to many of you, David Makali, a journalist with Citizen TV. So give our panel a round of applause, please. So today we're talking about bloggers and whether or not they should be regulated. As we all know, Kenya has one of the most progressive constitutions in the world today. And in that constitution, we have some responsibilities, but we also have some rights around freedom of expression. So the debate we're going to have today, the discussion that we're going to have today is going to be very interactive. I'll be coming to the audience a lot to hear your thoughts. But how we'd like to start is with our very distinguished panel here, maybe get 5 to 10 minutes of their thoughts on this question of regulation and freedom of speech, freedom of expression in Kenya today, the rights and the responsibilities that we all have as citizens or residents of Kenya, and where to draw that line between what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable, and whether regulation is required, and if that regulation is required, whether we're talking about self-regulation or something a bit more formalized. So I'd like to start first with our brother David Makali from Citizen TV. No? Mm-hmm. Okay. So let me start with our host then, Bake. Okay. Point well taken. So let's go straight to Bake and the partner with which we're hosting this event today. So, Jerry, bloggers, do they need to be regulated in Kenya today?
Thank you very much, Daudi. I am glad to be here and happy that we are discussing this, although I find that to be a very loaded question. I would like to first for us to sort of break apart what exactly is blogging, because there has been a lot of misinformation of what exactly a blogger is, and I think that is what has necessitated this discussion on whether bloggers need to be regulated or not. We have had a lot of misinformation on who exactly bloggers are, and what we're seeing is that anyone who is on social media, whether running a blog or a microblog, that is either on Twitter or on Facebook, they are considered as bloggers. And that makes it very tricky because, in essence, any Kenyan who can afford internet-enabled phone or an internet-enabled device and is on the internet is considered a blogger. Now, that is very ambiguous. So I think the first discussion that we need to be having is who exactly is a blogger? Because we need to define who is a blogger. And with that, now we're able to know, do we need a regulation of Kenyan citizens online? Because I think maybe that's what we need to be discussing. Do we need the regulation of Kenyan citizens online? Or do we need to very specifically identify who a blogger is, and in essence now decide, yes, if this is a blogger, because we have the same for journalists. We know who a journalist is. And by that definition, now we're able to say, yes, this is what journalists are allowed to do, and this is what they're not allowed to do. Okay, I think I have about 10 minutes. And so I'd like to delve into why I do not see the need for bloggers to be regulated. First and foremost, bloggers are Kenyan citizens, okay? And by virtue of being Kenyan citizens, they're already regulated by the Kenyan constitution and the Kenyan laws. And every citizen is required, demanded of by the law to obey the laws. And that is why if you do not obey the law, there are consequences, there are courts, okay? And so it doesn't mean that just because you're existing in a virtual environment that the laws do not apply to you. The laws still apply to you. But it also doesn't mean that just because you're in a virtual environment that there's a new set of laws that are supposed to apply to you as a Kenyan citizen online. So that is something else that we need to understand. Now, by virtue of Kenya being a signatory of international and regional instruments guaranteeing rights of freedom of expression, and some of them are what? The International Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I think the one that is most crucial to this discussion is the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. Now, by virtue of Kenya being a signatory to those conventions, then there are demands that are made of it to commit to these conventions. Now, one of them is that the standards regarding freedom of expression apply to online expression. And Kenya is obliged to implement international treaties via domestic law. Now, the Kenyan Constitution, which was passed in 2010, specifically provides for freedom of expression under Article 33. And that also includes freedom of information. And what basically bloggers are doing, which now would sort of put them in the same category as journalists, is that they are providing freedom of information. People are seeking for information, bloggers are providing this information. And the international mandate call for the promotion of and use of self-regulation as an effective tool in redressing harmful speech. So we don't need new rules. We don't need new rules, and neither do we need regulation by any other bodies apart from self-regulation by these bloggers. Now, it is a fact that Kenya has very limited cyber law provisions. We have seen instances where the Kenya Police, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, as well as the Communications Commission of Kenya, which is now called Communications Authority of Kenya, have committed monitoring, have admitted to monitoring online speech. Now, this monitoring is not provided explicitly in the law. So do we have, despite the Constitution of Kenya providing the right to protection of data, which is data protection, we do not have a data protection law, which ensures privacy to personal data. And so the monitoring is also not provided by the law. So the absence of specific legislation regarding freedom of information, freedom of expression, is what is the ambiguity that exists that is allowing bloggers to be arrested in the name of protecting national security, for undermining authority, and other very vague laws that do not actually, they are in contravention with the Kenyan Constitution. And freedom of expression and freedom of information are constitutional liberties that should not be curtailed under the guise of public morals, national security, or public order. So we need to have that very clear, that blogging is actually freedom of expression. So do we need to curtail freedom of expression? That's a question that we need to ask ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Jerry. Engineer Borat, the challenge laid down here, and we've seen this in some of the policies that govern internet use. There was a conference a couple of years ago where the top legal minds in the world, the top minds of the UN got together to try and formulate a policy of human rights for the internet. And at the end of that conference, they basically came out with one line. all the freedoms and all the freedoms that you enjoy offline are also protected online. Jerry has taken us through various points, saying that you can't really legislate for or regulate bloggers if you haven't defined who bloggers are, and the responsibilities and the freedoms that are protected in our constitution. As the regulator in this space, do you concur with her sentiments? Do you feel that what she's saying has some merits?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, thank you for this opportunity where we are able to meet the bloggers. I mean, we are the grassroots. And I think it's good for us, it's good input. I think what Njeri has said really is, is to begin the debate. What I want to say is the first thing is she talked about the definition of this thing on. Can you get me?
Yeah.
Okay. The definition of blogging. I think that is where we begin. But where I want to go is that as a blogger today, whatever is being blogged actually finds its way in mainstream media. So it doesn't just stop there. So where I would like us to focus is this thing that is being blogged. It doesn't stop there. So where, for example, it's not journalism, because I think the difference between blogging and journalism is, I think journalism has got 4 stages. You write, you edit, and then you present. But blogging skips the edit stage because you don't have somebody an intermediary like a media house. So you just go from publishing and, you just take it through. So if what you are blogging ends up similar to journalism, targeting the same, I think we need to have the same rules really, because the effect is the same. You may not need a body to regulate, because I think the question of regulation really, I may agree with Njeri that we don't need another body to regulate, but we need regulations. And those regulations can actually even be formulated by the Bloggers Association itself. It's only when the association fails that really another body comes. But the issue of, because at the moment we are able to actually regulate just by because for example, the Constitution, you've talked about Article 33. Okay, this is one article that has limitations. There's limitation in terms of hate speech. There's limitation in terms of propaganda for war. There's limitation in terms of, incitement to violence. So as much as you talk of freedom of expression, freedom of information, there are limitations because you need to protect the rights of others. So my take really is, first of all, there's a deterrent factor just by that limitation of the Constitution. There's also a deterrent factor by just having the NCIC Act. NCIC doesn't need to do anything. It just has to have the act in place. Penal code has to be, I think what has changed is just the forum. The way we relate one-to-one. Now we are relating online. So if I abuse you online, offline, the penal code applies. If I abuse you online, it should also apply. It's just the forum that has changed, but still the same. So we have a responsibility really. We should not take the excuse of the technology to bring new standards. The standards must be the same, whether it's online, whether it's offline. The standards have to be the same, but we don't need to come there. We want the Bloggers Association to formulate these rules. Look at journalists. What is expected of a journalist? Borrow. You may not borrow everything, but borrow just the basic to show your responsibility, to show your obligation to fellow Kenyans.
Thank you very much for that. Please hold on to the microphone. I'll be coming to you next. We've heard from the bloggers. We've heard from the regulators. Kennick as the custodians of the backbone, the technology that a lot of these discussions are occurring on. We've repeatedly heard that maybe bloggers are being monitored or systems are in place to capture hate speech online. Does Kennick have a position on this, on the regulation of internet online, or do you stand for a completely free internet? Or do you have any thoughts on the issues that we're discussing today?
Um, First of all, I would like to thank iHub for arranging this forum. I would like to declare, first of all, my interest. Bloggers are my customers as the .ke as the .ke custodian. I would like as much bloggers to get the .ke domain and continue doing that thing. Now, get back to what the concerns. I like the contributions which have so far been given, but I'm for self-regulation. What I will urge the Bloggers Association is to fast track and strengthen the self-regulation, because if you don't change, change will change you. You know, government only moves in when you're not acting. But if you have a strong regulation rules in place, then they will see, okay, these guys have their own ways of disciplining themselves in case there's that discipline in court. Another thing I would like to move this discussion from the local scenario of self-regulation within Kenya, I will urge the bloggers, I'm not seeing their participation in the IANA transition. You know, the American government has intentions of moving out of controlling the internet. And there's a serious discussion on who should manage the internet. Last week I was in Singapore, an ICANN event. And there are more, these wars we are having here is a discussion, because within corridors, you meet guys asking you, hey, in Kenya, there are issues, bloggers, what's happening? So you have to give issues, you know, you are an ambassador at that time. So you have to give excuses here and there. But what I want to take head on with our bloggers, I would like to see your contribution on the IANA transition. Because apart from shaping the rules within the country, we should also put our input into how the internet will be managed in future. And if we don't speak now, then interesting rules are passed, then complain later. Because the discussion is open now, we should contribute and say how the internet should be managed in future. That's one issue. The second one is blogging is, okay, see here, because sort of in reporting, I I hope I have protection, because Makali has been silenced. I hope I'll not be the second. But okay, that was on a light note. What I'd like to say is that blogging creates employment. You can monetize your thing and make sure you get a few coins here and there. So let's continue doing it. But regulation, self-regulation, I'm strongly for self-regulation. What we should know is let's not tramp on other people's right, because the moment you tramp on somebody's right, then that freedom of expression sort of gets into focus and needs to be discussed. But I would like to raise this discussion. I'm insisting that let's discuss on also the IANA transition and make sure that our input is being taken on how the internet will be managed in future. Because we are having issue locally, they will soon be international. We are quiet. I'm not seeing it, because I've been looking at contributions. I can't see much from Kenya. We are quiet. Nigerians are putting in quite a contribution. South Africa are leading. If just to give you numbers on CCTL, this is the top country called top level domains. In Africa, there are 1.4 million. South Africa owns 1 million of them. 400,000 is shared within the other African countries. So we need to do, and you know, blogging, of course, comes from a domain. So it has to start there, and then we move down. Thank you.
So thank you for that. So there's a challenge there to bloggers to support the .ke domain. But David, you know, whenever we have these discussions about bloggers and their responsibilities, inevitably someone will always bring up journalists and talk about, you know, the structures and the frameworks within journalists operate, as opposed to the unregulated, the seen as the unregulated space in which bloggers operate. However, in Kenya especially, we're seeing that several mainstream media journalists are now blogging, or several bloggers are mainstream media journalists, some of whom are in this room today. So that line is getting blurry. As a journalist, when you hear about arguments like this, when you hear about advice such as self-regulation, considering what the Kenyan media has gone through, what jumps out at you? What are your thoughts?
Thanks, Daudi, for the opportunity. First, let me say, I begin from a point that I appreciate the contribution of bloggers. If there is such a group of people who should be so-called bloggers, because quite frankly, I don't even know why people are trying to isolate themselves into a certain corner and branding themselves or so labeling themselves as bloggers, because as far as we can tell, bloggers or anybody actually should be blogging. It should just be in the business of blogging. Except that those who are using that medium, the online media more frequently, have got that notoriety to begin to brand themselves as a special breed of people. I do not think they are, first of all. Those who are practicing and pretending to be more active on the net, and therefore, like Daudi, labeling themselves bloggers, would be, much like, I think, let me call them the younger brothers of journalists, all right? Like when you're growing up, you're a kid and you want to be like your father, right? You want to put on his big trousers, and try and wear the big shoes, and aspire to be the father. That is how I would call bloggers in this town, because they have ventured into territory that is really alien to them, because they don't know that there are rules that apply in that thing they call journalism. And so they want to create something that can be described and therefore invite legislation about it, which I don't think is right, because what we do, all of us, we have a platform there, whether, any citizen has the platform called social media to exercise their freedom of expression pursuant to Article 33 of the Constitution. So this attempt to, classify people as bloggers, and therefore, in fact, I'm shocked. There's something that is growing up on us called the Bloggers Association of Kenya. Really? Are you going to have the whole country members of this Bloggers Association? Or, what is this that you guys are trying to grow on us? Should the whole society therefore be members of that Bloggers Association? In fact, do you have any rules? Do you have a register? I would be shocked if there are such things, because you can never, that register would be the most elastic of registers, because everybody will be joining, if indeed the way I know that platform is going to grow. However, having said that, I must appreciate the contribution of bloggers, because I think they're bridging a certain gap in the practice of journalism that is necessary for societal growth. Because we are so constrained by rules and of the practice of journalism, a lot of things go unreported, and a lot of things which are happening which need to come out, therefore finding the avenue of bloggers, let me use that word selectively, to come out. And many bloggers are doing a great job, and therefore helping journalism to, expand its horizons, because we are accommodating them to the extent that they are passing information, but the integrity of that information is in doubt. So then we cut off at that point where, what is the process certification of the processing of the information? The difference between the bloggers and the journalists is that we are governed by certain rules of fair play, of verification, of attribution, and right of reply. In certain moralistic things, such as, pictures you use have to have a certain, acceptability, moral, things around that, which bloggers, quite frankly, try to do, but because they have no standard they're holding themselves up to, they obviously always fail. So we see all those bad pictures and all those bad statements. I've been a victim of blogging myself, recently. Of those people called bloggers. Somebody runs a website called Kenya Moja. So recently, I will not get into the details of it, but I think I obstructed something that that guy wanted to do, or they had tried to plant something on my show. That I said, no, that can't pass. We can't have you. So the next day, I saw a story has been planted online by those bloggers saying I had been paid millions of money by Alfred Mutua, the Machakos governor. I don't know who saw that story. And that I had met Alfred at Boma Hotel and they'd given me lots of money to begin doing his PR, and fight off his enemies. I mean, that kind of journalism. Okay, no. That kind of information. I was not called. There was nothing. It was in the figment of somebody's imagination. And they planted it there. Now, you see, if you are going to operate like that, really, you invite certain controls, certain regulatory steps. But I'm not a supporter of that. Happily, I am with those who say we don't need regulation of bloggers because, again, as I said, who are you regulating? We already have enough laws to regulate all of us who are potentially bloggers or are blogging, but not as prominently or as frequently as the bloggers. Because anybody who writes online, unless, David, you teach me what the difference is a blogger or a potential blogger. Unless, of course, you say you have isolated like a space there, a page which you write your own things every other day, and so you have acquired a certain, distinction as the writer and editor and publisher of that, space. Then we call you a blogger, all right? But I don't think we need to do anything like regulation because all these things are governed by existing laws. The Constitution is clear. I mean, the breaches of the law of Article 33, which is the freedom of expression clause, and a bit of 34, which is now the media component. If you breach that, of course, there are other laws in the penal code which you'll be caught with, and especially the Defamation Act of 1990, which governs privacy and libel and all those things. And there are other laws in the penal code. I know a lot of bloggers would be captured under the penal code, Article 106 of the penal code especially. There was an attempt once to charge me with it. Something called publishing alarmist information. And a lot of alarmist information is published on social media today. We don't need it anymore. I think what we need to do is sensitization of the citizenry on their freedom of expression and the limits thereto, so that each of us can express ourselves as robustly as possible, but be aware of the consequences of that expression. That's how I would approach it. Thanks.
Thank you. So we've had 4 very telling and biting comments. But let's take stock of who's in the room. So if you have a Twitter account, please stand up. If you have a Facebook account, stay standing. If you have a blog, stay standing. Okay, so all of you are bloggers, the people who are here. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to take a moderator's privilege and start off the first round of questions, one for each of our panelists, and then we'll open it out to the floor. So, Engineer Burnett, are we focusing on the wrong issue here? Instead of, it seems to me from what we're hearing from the panel, that the problem is actually content and inaccurate, hateful, dangerous content online, not really the medium or the definition of the person who's publishing that content. For example, we have members of parliament who are before the courts right now for hate speech and things like that. So rather than the focus being on bloggers, is the authority doing anything around ensuring that no Kenyan, regardless of who they are or what profession they are, or whether they label themselves a blogger or not, are captured under the same, with the same vigor that seems to be applied to bloggers?
Okay, thank you very much, Daudi. I think now I think we are getting there really, because I think it's not whether they should be regulated or not. I think all of us here see that this is a space for self-regulation. But I think more than that, I think what Makali has said is even expanding it more, because where we sit really, whether it's a blogger, whether it's a Facebook user, you've told some people to sit down, but from where we sit really, they're all applicable, because we are looking at the content they are passing. What we know is the laws are adequate. We've got the penal code, we've got the NCIC Act, we've got even Information Act, whereby electronic material can be taken as evidence. And even as the authority also, we've got measures like we will set up KNIC, we call it KESAT, Kenya Cyber Incident Response. And it's actually a deterrent, because people report to us and we're able to pass the information to security agencies. And the objective really is not to crack down on people. She talked about monitoring, but we don't do that. Monitoring, really, you need a search warrant. It's illegal. You must get court order to be able to monitor somebody's conversation. What all we do is maybe you can just know, for example, with the SIM registration, you're able to know, because in Kenya, mobile is the major means of really accessing the internet. So it's SIM registration. So what we are saying is we have the tools in place in terms of regulation. We have the laws in place. But now I also want to disagree with Makali in the issue of the association. I think the association is good, because there's a critical mass. They may really not be representing everybody, but you see when they generate rules, they raise the bar. I mean, they give this an agenda. That's why we are meeting here. If everybody was on their own, I mean, we could not have this discussion. So we need somebody who can carry the discussion forward, and most of us will benefit from the discussion, even as the regulator or a blogger.
Thank you. Mr. Mari, as the custodian of this backbone, and it's interesting that you mentioned ICANN and the discussions that are having at an international level about the regulating of the online space. And, we've seen countries beginning to break away or threatening to break away from the international framework. I think China was the first. Brazil has threatened to do the same. As the Kenyan network operator, do you ever feel under pressure to break away from the international governance structures? Do you think that would be a progressive or regressive move for Kenning to take? And more specifically, do you feel a responsibility to protect the openness of the internet as it's been enjoyed in Kenya today?
I always say one world, one internet. So breaking away won't help us, because we need the one internet network as a world. So that's my starting point. So breaking off Kenya and coming up with our own network, I don't think that will be the right way to go, because we need to share. Now, the concerns, and I think I talked of us not contributing to the IANA transition. The internet will be governed. America is moving off. The governance structure of the future is being discussed. We are not contributing. That's dangerous. Because when you don't contribute, people will form rules for you. That's one thing. The other thing, it touched on something. I've just remembered you asked me something about monitoring what is going on. We don't monitor. And as the CA has confirmed, we don't. What we do is, if you are in a .ke domain and your website is compromised, it's easier to come to us and we'll sort you out. But if it's a .com, .org, and so on, you know the process. It will take forever. But if it's a .ke and you have issues, somebody got into your website and did removed the picture of a tree and put a donkey there, we will step in. You'll write to CA. If they are not acting, you know where my office is. You walk in and demand that I do something about it. But if it's a .com, sorry, I'll tell you, write to Los Angeles and then you join the numbers. But I believe in one world, one internet. I know Brazil has done the same, China. Fortunately, the networks have not been switched on. as per last week. We were having meetings discussing that the networks have not been switched on. There's still a wild discussion to convince them that we need one internet. We need one internet. So that's my position.
Okay, you mentioned something. I think maybe what I want to emphasize also is when we talk of, let's say, the Kenya Cyber Incident Response Unit, the important thing of that is we are a trusted source. You need a trusted source. Like Makali the other day, he had an issue. If it actually comes to a trusted source like us, we can actually track the website that is hosting that, and we can actually tell them to bring it down. And even if they don't bring it down, we can actually talk to like the main. We have a relationship now with Facebook, Twitter. We have actually one-to-one discussions, and they can actually take down that material. We've actually done 3 experiences now. So the important thing is who tells you to take down. That's what Facebook usually wants to know, or Twitter. They want somebody they can trust. Not anybody can tell them to take down. So, and I think that is important to everybody because you don't know tomorrow whether you'll be a victim or not.
Sorry?
Let me add something then.
Okay.
One other issue is, as my colleague here from CA has talked of, we have a problem because I'm getting a lot of cases whereby, let's say, Makali has registered www.makali.com. Then when his business grows, someone registers www.makali.co.ke. And he starts selling counterfeits of what Makali is selling. So please, get on .ke, because when you come up with that case, now it becomes difficult. Because we are Kenyans, we register .com, you have a nice brand, then someone rides on it by registering .co.ke. CA is on my case, sort out that issue. So it's important. If you have a .com, the same name, please also register a .ke on it, because you guys, you know, some of you are cyber squatters, so you'll register it and register it and wait for Makali. When his items are good, you'll tell him, okay, Makali, come here. You'd have registered with 1,000 Kenya shillings. Now I need 500,000. So that was I wanted to raise that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, Mark, shouldn't there be a law to, bar people from exploiting other people's identities? For example, why should somebody go and register makali.com when I'm the owner of that name?
Okay. We are governed with our local laws and international regulations. If someone searches for that particular name and it's free, he will register it. So because you can imagine blocking all names, so it will be searched, and it's a big issue. It's a big issue. We have big names. I don't want to name them here, but we have very reputable organizations who have cases in front of me who were just on .com. They have become popular. Now somebody has registered makali.co.ke. And internationally, you get reputation. If you have a .ke, they know you are in Kenya. But a .com, they're not sure where you are. So if you're a big organization in Kenya and you're not .ke, you have our upper hand. I think the same problem the export promotion zone is getting, because it has been doing something with the SMEs. Then they continue discussing with those markets on Gmails and so on. The particular potential clients go quiet because they don't know, are these guys in Kenya or not? So you get a market, you continue discussing on. I can see. Okay, fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Jerry,
I'd like to comment on that. Getting a .co.ke domain has been a nail-pulling experience. There's a time .co.ke domain was going for, I think, about 7,000 shillings, which is something that most bloggers, I'm not talking about corporates because now that's a different thing altogether, but for most bloggers, if you compare spending 500 shillings, which is the cost of a .com domain, versus getting a .co.ke domain at 6,000 shillings, well, my good friend has told me that the cost has come down, but we are not aware. So if bloggers are not aware that the cost of .co.ke domain is down, who is aware? Okay, so there has been a lot of back and forth. We have been as bloggers, we have been lobbying CANIC to lower the cost of .co.k and also create awareness on what are the values apart from having a fancy .co.k domain. What other value does one get from having a .co.k domain? And that probably is now what will enable most people, a lot of Kenyans, register .co.k domain to have that as a first choice, as opposed to having a .com.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. So Canning should get a blog, is what you're saying. But yeah, I own several .kes, and they're now 2,000 shillings. There should be another further price cut. But I want to get us back to the issue. I think the iHub will need to host another forum on how we can support the .ke domain, and we'll invite Canning back for that. Back to the topic at hand today. You know, Jerry, we're a continent of storytellers. We're a country of storytellers. As David says, you know, if every Kenyan will have to be a member of BAKE. I always say, I wrote a blog post many years ago saying that blogging is the most African thing you can do online. It's giving voice to your own story in your own words, in your own style. At the same time, you get, you know, friends in the media who are saying if you don't develop your own rules, then the rules will be developed for you. So first of all, does BAKE make sense? Is there a need to have an organizing body for bloggers? And if so, are you looking at developing these rules to almost regulate yourself, to self-regulate the content that your members produce?
Thank you, Daudi. There's a very important role that BAKE plays, apart from what is most known, which is an association for members who are termed as bloggers, who also happen to be small brothers to journalists. Just so that I make it clear, and this is something that there has been a lot of debate on, are bloggers failed journalists? And one thing I'd like to make very clear, and this we have seen in the diversity of the number of blogs that we have there, we don't have bloggers who want to be journalists. If you want to be a journalist, there's the clear-cut route. You know, you need to go to Kenya School of Mass Communication or things like that. You need to be accredited by the Media Council of Kenya. So we are not confused about who we want to be. We know what we are. Okay, so I think that needs to be very clear. The other thing that I'd like to make very clear is that the role of blogging is changing. We are seeing blogging becoming very the initial role, because I started blogging in 2005, and the role then was, yes, I need a space as a creative writer, as a poet. I have not been able to get a publisher. I'm looking for a space I can self-publish, and that has been the process for people to share things they're passionate about. But with time, we're seeing that changing. That blogging is now is filling the void. And that is why we are having a term called citizen journalism. Now, basically, citizen journalism is people, you are at a certain event, you're at a certain place, something is happening, you are the first on the ground, and so you report on it, and that makes you a citizen journalist. And we are seeing the changing role of bloggers to fill the void that has been created by mainstream media. A very good example is in reporting of corruption. A very good example is a blogger called Abraham Mutai. He was jailed for reporting on corruption in Isiolo County. And so BAKE as an association is a very important association, because what it does, it not only trains people on the internet as a tool for self-expression and as a tool for people to actually make money, because you can actually make money from blogging. BAKE also plays a role of recognizing quality content, and I think it needs to come out clearly that BAKE is for quality content. So we are not advocating for blogs that are defaming or blogs that are perpetrating hate speech. BAKE exists to encourage quality content about this country. Okay. The other role that BAKE plays is having a community of online content creators who self-regulate. Because I'd like to make it very clear, as BAKE, we are not going to regulate bloggers, because you can't regulate free speech. Okay, and so we cannot, what the most that we will have, and we already have it in place, we have a code of conduct. And the same applies during the awards. So if you want to participate in the BAKE Awards, you have to abide by a code of conduct, which means that you cannot defame someone on your blog. And those are basic principles that the law are actually in line with the law. But we will not regulate bloggers.
What is the penalty for breaking the BAKE code of conduct?
Excommunication.
From BAKE?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Has anyone been?
Yes. I will not name names, but we have people that we have told categorically.
Why not?
Robert Alai has tried being a BAKE member for the longest time, and we told him, so long as you are, perpetrating hate speech on social media, on your blog, you cannot be a BAKE member. The same thing was said to Gafla. You cannot be a BAKE member if you are claiming that this celebrity was seen with this celebrity or was caught, in a compromising situation with this celebrity, and you do not have, you cannot verify the facts. You cannot be a BAKE member, and it works because they change, because that belonging to a community is something that bloggers are seeing has value. So the minute that we say that you cannot be a BAKE member, then they see that I'm actually losing out. If I am serious about blogging, if I want to appeal to corporates and corporates want to work with me through BAKE, and they cannot because BAKE will not vouch for me, then they start shaping up.
That's very interesting. I think my respect for BAKE has just grown tremendously in the last 2 minutes. But now coming back to my elder brother, what? The mainstream media. I think I need to tell you my personal story. I had a blog for many years. The reason I decided to actually get a domain and to become serious about it was because in the 2002 general election, for those of you who can remember that far back, there was a candidate who seemed to be favored by the incumbent structures, and there was an opposition candidate at that time who could not get any media time. So he said, you know what, this is unfair. This is Kenya, especially a public broadcaster like KBC should be giving equal media time to all the candidates in this election. But since they're not, maybe this is a role where citizen journalists can play a role. This was in 2002. In 2007, that opposition candidate was now the incumbent, and we know early 2008 there was a media blackout, and there really was a gap in information in the country, which again led to the rise of several blogs and even to initiatives such as Ushahidi. 2013, it seemed like the media was really deciding what was acceptable, what wasn't acceptable for Kenyans to watch. It's almost like you really were being the big brother in the ominous sense of the word. So perhaps the rise in blogging in Kenya can be directly correlated to the media abdicating their responsibility to the country. How would you respond to a charge like that?
Well, first of all, I think it's true, and I am not one of the best defenders of the media because I have been a critic of the media most of my journalism practice. I was more of a media critic, so I always step one foot in, then I'm out, occasionally in, I'm almost out again because of other reasons. But yeah, the growth of that space, that fraternity of people you have called bloggers, is directly related to that failure of the media. It's true, and as I said earlier on, we appreciate the contribution and they plug in that particular. In fact, it's not just even failure. There are stories that the media will not publish for because they cannot establish through the processing the veracity of some things to be able to publish, either because they're denied access or they're difficult to establish, and they cannot overlook the legal consequences of publishing. You'll be slapped with damages for, But that space has been occupied fully by the bloggers. We are happy to have them there. doing that work. There, you know, and you are playing the role that, let me tell you a history in the journalism in this country. There was a time in the 80s that were very repressive. You could not publish certain information even when you had the facts. So what the Kenyan media used to do, they would leak those stories out to newspapers outside the country, in Britain, in other countries. And then those newspapers, once the stories are reported there, they would then report them as having been reported by those newspapers, you know, to beat censorship. So that role is what you guys are now playing. So you can say something and we can say it's alleged to have been written by a lie, or so you have the excuse of not being the first purveyor of that information. And so your liability legally is lessened, not completely eliminated, but it becomes lesser by the virtue of the fact that you're attributing that to a certain source, whether it's true or not. So true, I mean, appreciation and thumbs up to the bloggers, but the bad seeds there are too much. That is why, you know, even when you begin to say you're an association, then you begin to own all the sins of the bloggers, even who are not your members. So maybe you should be doing outreach to get as many to play by the rules. But as I can tell, it is very difficult to be able to get people to subscribe to those rules, and even to have, I don't know how many members you have. Tough. But yes, Shahidi is a true story of what happened in 2007, and the evidence couldn't be published by the mainstream media, so it had to find its way through you guys and like in Oreo column. 2013 was a bad moment for this country. I mean, I'm never proud of that moment for media in this country. We were applauded, and really everybody, including heads of state and international agencies, applauded the Kenyan media for a great job. But that was the lowest point of Kenyan journalism, because the things that they never published were graphic. You know, it was see no evil, publish no evil. See no evil, say no evil. So the society will appreciate you perhaps when you fail. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Okay, let's take some questions from the audience. Please state your name, who you are, introduce yourself, and make your question as short and distinct as possible, and also let us know who you're directing your questions to. So let's take the first round of 3 questions. Okay, there's one here at the front. Anyone this side? Okay. There's a second question there. Okay, please get the third one there. Okay.
Okay, good evening. My name is Santina. I am a blogger, but not a political blogger. I write about a lot of things, but I'd also like to say that I have a small startup that wants to promote African content. What you said of telling stories, because that's the way we are. We tell stories. But my question is directed to the CAK engineer. What I'd like to ask him is, watching the way, reading about the trends that are happening globally, we are moving towards a more transparent society where information is not only going to be in the custody of the government, but also citizens are going to play a role. They're going to be custodians of information that previously the government had. I wish one of the lawmakers was here so that I could direct also the question to her or him, but I would like to know whether there would be laws in place, because you're going in 5 to 15 years, you're going to see that a lot of what we thought was classified information is going to be available to everybody. So how are we going to protect this information per se for the benefit of the citizens, but also for the government? Because we can't know everything. We can't be custodians of all the information. We need to be protected from the things we need not know. But I think also the government, seeing we are being governed by laws, it has a right to some information that's private only to them. So is there any laws in place, or are there any discussions in place to make sure this happens?
Okay, thank you. Let's take another 2 questions and then come for answers. I think there's, yeah.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I have a comment. I'm Peter. I'm a member of BEC. I blog. So first of all, to Mr. Omari of Kenik, I think it will be right if Kenik can use blog space to market.co.ke. So coming here and telling us about .co.ke is not enough. My challenge and my request to you is that we have blogs that generate a lot of traffic. And I can tell you many Kenyans nowadays, like now there's a blackout in the Kenyan media. There's no Citizen, like Makali, I'm a fan of Cheche. I'm really missing, but you see like now, it's better I go to Facebook and see what a lie is saying. Because there's a total blackout. So Mr. Omari, look, use our space, use BEC to market the .co.ke. Now, I'll also mention something about what Makali said. And it's good that later, now you said that...
You have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Okay. I just wanted to say that in the print media, there's a lot of blogging. If you go to the town there, you'll see Nairobi News, what. They are not blogging online. But I think even them, they're doing blogging by putting, yes, the newspapers. That is a form of blogging, though it's not, on the internet. You pick Nairobi News or whatever it is on the stands in town there, you'll get a lot of gutter things there. So not only as bloggers that we are putting trash, also the print media, they'll be putting a lot of trash there. Now, the last question to CA, you guys, you just have to sort out your issues with Makali and the rest, because we need the news back. Thank you.
Okay, another question, yeah? Third question?
Hi, my name is Perry. I'm from TTA Emergency. My question goes to CA and possibly Kenik. I'd like to know more about the Kenya Cyber Incident Response Unit. And then there's the issue of anonymity and foreign-based blogs and bloggers who you cannot really identify. And I think that presents a problem when it comes to having them brought offline. I know. So, do you have mechanisms to block them from the Kenyan cyberspace?
Let's go to the round of questions.
Are with me, yeah? Okay, I think I'll start with Santina, who is a blogger. She's a confessed blogger. So she talked about the issue of data protection. And I think Jerry had mentioned that issue. I think it's a gap we still have because there's the issue of the data protection law, which is not yet developed. Okay, the Constitution talks of right to information, but that has to be guided by legislation. And that really is outstanding. But I think with the current Constitution, we are challenged even as government to share information. Currently, we are sharing information on need-to-know basis, but it will not be long before, but I'll not be able to answer that really because the law is not yet in place. So that's really a gap with us because you need to know whatever information you put there, does it belong to the host? Does it remain yours? When your information is deleted, have you right to be forgotten? Those issues. Those are the issues really that are still outstanding. So I think I'll not be comprehensive on that question. When it comes to Gita, Gita talked about, I think it was directed to Makali. The comments were directed to Makali. I think what was directed to me was the issue which is out of this discussion. I think the issue but I think it's also important because I said bloggers actually end up in mainstream. They begin as blog, but yeah, that issue really I think is, if I may comment, is really will be sorted out. I think what has happened is we are migrating technology from analog to digital. The challenge really is once we are in the digital, actually the discussion now, we are already in digital. So within the digital format now, we are saying the three media owners would like to wait for their network to be in place before they put up their content. But as from the CS side and government, we are saying, it's okay, we will wait for you to put up your network. But meanwhile, why don't you put your content in these existing platforms? Because we have platforms existing. And so we have actually a solution for them. And we would like you really to bear with us, because once we achieve this migration, the benefits really are enormous. It's a painful exercise. We know people had favorite programs. But once we achieve the digital migration, the issue of additional, because now we have about 40 new stations, we have more content, so we will gain more by moving. And I think there's also news from the radios, there's news from, I think for news, there are other channels now. You are getting to know there were other channels which you never watched maybe before. So maybe when we achieve migration now, there'll be a level playing field, which is good it's a good thing for Macaulay and all of us. So I think I'll take that as a challenge, but we are aware of your concern on that. Then the issue of KSAT. KSAT really, as I said, is more of being a trusted source for this country. And we work in partnership with other jurisdictions. For example, this is for Kenya, Uganda, they have theirs. And we also work with government security agencies. We really have a lot of partnership. So what happens is if you encounter an hate speech or something not favorable for you, you actually get in touch with us. What we do is we'll be able to get in touch with the security agencies, because we are not enforced. We just give the information. We can also talk actually to our counterparts in other countries. We also have relationships with Twitter, Facebook, direct relationships, and they can actually pull down. And we can also be able to get the site which, even if there's anonymity, it will be posted in a particular site. So it can actually be removed even with anonymity. Okay, the advantage of anonymity is it actually helps in discussion, because there are some marginalized people who wouldn't like to identify themselves. The only disadvantage is you don't get depth discussion, because somebody is hiding. Sometimes you need some details, so you don't get enough. But there's advantage in flashing out issues. And anonymity is important for flashing out issues, but we lose out now when we want to carry the debate further. But as KSAT, I think we also share statistics, information about what's going on, awareness. And I think that's what Beck can really do. I think she talked about self-regulation. No, that there's no regulation. But I think a code of conduct actually is a self-regulation where we sit. So, and I think it's more of awareness to their members of what laws are there. Like now, even if you have an anonymous posting and you put in your site, actually you take liability. So you need to know that even if you are not aware that it's there. So you have a responsibility to check your site all the time, make sure whatever is there is not within the limitations, the hate speech, violence, and we will really not need even a regulator to follow you.
Can I continue?
There was a question about using Bake to, but that was more of a suggestion, so I think you'll take that on board. Well, then you would like to respond at all? No. Okay, so let's take a next round of questions. We've got one over there, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, okay.
So maybe this is a question for both the government and for Bake.
Please tell us who you are.
Oh, sorry, my name is Eric Hirschman, the iHub. So the maybe one of the big elephants in the room is not so much about political speech, but about commercial speech. What is the government doing about disclosure laws? And what is Bake doing about disclosure rules on blogging for money?
Okay, thank you. There's one more. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Wanjiru Kiusa. I'm a blogger and a member of Bake. I am currently in the School of Journalism, not because I am a wannabe journalist, but I have noticed something probably the journalist in the house could probably tell us. Throughout the curriculum, I have not seen anything on social media. So I know there is a gap with regards to journalism and social media. And if blogging is so, well, awful, for lack of a better word, where is journalism not coping or looking to adapt towards social media?
Thank you.
Um, excuse me, my name is Wambui from Daystar University, and to our friend from the School of Journalism, we talk about blogging and social media there, so maybe you should switch schools. But, apart from that, I wanted to raise a question to both Jerry and David concerning self-regulation. I think we've seen in the media that self-regulation is a wonderful concept, but it is dominated by particular bigger players. So like the media owners are very strong and they can kind of control this idea of regulation. So the smaller players don't really have a voice. So what are your thoughts concerning how big can handle that? And maybe from David, since you're a friend of bloggers, what would you say to the bloggers concerning self-regulation? Thank you.
And one last question at the back. Yes.
Okay, hi, my name is Chris from the iHub. I have a question, I think it's from the Kennick. Because so many people register.com websites because they think they can't be taken down easily, especially for people who are trying to be whistleblowers and putting more sensitive information. What sort of guarantee or assurance would you put in place so that if there's a source that needs to be protected, the government won't say, shut down that .co.ke domain, take them offline?
Okay, thank you. Let's come back for a round of questions. I'll start with David and go this way.
It's regrettable that the school where you are, as your colleague there said, they're not teaching social media. Most schools of journalism have a program, a course called New Media and Online Journalism. Most schools, progressive schools, and this thing began like 15 years ago almost, being a major course. The problem in this country is that we do not have expert trainers, teachers of that particular course. So you might be lacking that course, not because it's by design, but a matter of capacity of that particular institution to offer that course. It should be. That's not University of Nairobi. That's not School of J. School of J. Well, there was a guy there who was supposed to do that particular course, but I think he went away. But Dr. George Nyabuga is still there. He's the Deputy Associate Director. Yeah, George Nyabuga is actually a man of new media, so that should be his area, teaching social media as part of the new media course. So it should be there. It also, about borrowing, that particular part about us borrowing, from that side. Is there much to borrow? That's the question to ask. What is there to borrow? Daudi, uko kwenu? Because we are, I mean, in terms of the media is trying to expand, you guys are fighting the space for the same space that the media is trying to dominate. And you'll see media trying to do online versions of things. But there's still pretty much repackaging of what has gone out in print, so they're still losing out in terms of speed, being on it quickly in terms of dissemination of the information. They're trying, but they do not, and I don't think they'll most likely practice the kind of journalism, in quotes, that is being practiced by bloggers, because it's not commercially in their interest, because they need to package to make the money from the trade in the news or information. They're trying to capture that, so they'll have sites which are breaking news so they can advertise there and stuff like that, but they may never really compete there effectively because the speed and the news processing methods and so forth will not, in some cases, help. They are too slow for that lane of bloggers, but it's an expansion area. If I was leading a media house, I'd probably be trying to do an online media site that really fights with the bloggers for credibility and to pull the numbers in. But I think they're not yet there. Maybe they, again, is a matter of capacity or visionary leadership within those houses. There's something I've forgotten.
On commercial content, Eric had asked about disclosures around commercial content.
Yes, it's important, I think. It's a part of the ethics of information management, I think, handling. Just the way we would expect that to be done with the mainstream. I think we need also to have that, because a lot of people are, serving masters in the spaces that they occupy. So they're like the gutter press. You know what we get in the gutter press? When you read a story in the Weekly Citizen, I have 10% truth. I give it 10% credibility. The rest is stories weaved around everything. And so they latch onto a small detail, which in your mind, it to be true. They can say Charity Ngilu has a house in Karen, this street, and has this car. The rest, that for fact and you can establish. The rest is just a yarn, of things that have been paid. And I know people have paid them to write wrong things. So let's not get there as bloggers where we also serve masters, that somebody gives you money and says, fix that guy because you have numbers. Or you're doing something because the motivation is something else. You're being financed or they have a commercial interest in something to do. Recent exposés have raised questions about that. That bloggers are pursuing certain things or undermining certain things because they have a vested interest, they have a financial interest in it. But the rest, I think, is just the ethics of journalism and information handling, that you have to have disclosure of interest, if there is, so that we can believe what we are reading from you, because your credibility also comes from that being transparent or being accountable. That lady said, what would I advise these people back? What we would tell back is to be a little more aggressive. I mean, there is space, honestly speaking, there is space. And, I think you're trying to claim that space. But the matter that we raised about what happens, what Daudi said, what happens to those who don't play by the rules of the association should be more prominent. When there are aberrations or those breaches of the code, we need to see bloggers, first of all, caning fellow bloggers and going to war with the unethical ones, so that then we begin to play a peer influence or social control over them, and they feel shy from those unethical things that they do, such as attacking people without any basis, or publishing information that can't be verified, or playing the rumor monger role, which is disastrous.
Okay, I'd like to make a small comment before I take on Eric's question on commercial disclosure. And this is a comment on the anonymity. I think it was raised by this gentleman. And and something that I'd like to mention is that we have had a very liberal atmosphere for Kenyan bloggers, and so we have not had, we've not seen incidents where a majority of Kenyan bloggers choosing to blog anonymously. But if things continue the way they are, and if there's more push for bloggers to be regulated by outside forces, then unfortunately we will see a lot of bloggers going underground, and that will not be good for this country. Because what will happen is that you will still have voices being heard, but you won't know where they're coming from. So that's something that, and one of the things that we're doing to ensure that Kenyan bloggers are aware of what the law says about use of social media is carrying out awareness in form of seminars. So we will be having a seminar, sorry, I'm doing a bit of advertising, but we'll be having a seminar on the 7th of March on this, the law and social media in Kenya. To answer Eric's question on commercial disclosure, I think this is where now CA can come in, because that is one of the things that I think it's a bigger priority than regulating. And let's be very honest, it's actually regulating of political bloggers. There's no one who's going to go and for lifestyle bloggers or what are they called, or fashion bloggers. This regulation is actually being targeted specifically at political bloggers, and there's a reason for that, which I won't go into. So what I will support you on is enacting, maybe having a policy towards commercial disclosure, which is something that is something that is become very rampant, and we have seen this in the US. There's a law on commercial disclosure such that if you're a blogger, you have been given a phone to review, you have been paid to do a review on your blog, that you make it very clear that this is a sponsored post. I would like to, and this also applies to political disclosures, because we see that in the run-up to elections. We have very many bloggers who will be paid not to outrightly say that I'm supporting politician X or Y, but you will tell that they are inclined to that, and so it's important that we have such regulation. There's a question that Wamboi asked on self-regulation of Bake and what role we're playing. Now, I think this sort of ties in with creating awareness that it's important that bloggers know which laws apply to the space that they exist in, and by that you cannot feign ignorance. There's nothing like you saying that you are ignorant of the law, because you'll still be jailed. Okay, but it's important that bloggers know that this is what entails self-regulation. That yes, there are laws that the Constitution allows you to freely express yourself online, but what are the limitations? And what does the law specifically say about defamation, libel, and things like that? Now, I'd like to make a small comment on what my good friend here said. We go way back. There's something he will not want to tell you, but in his other life, Makali had a huge interest in the arts, and in that space, we worked very well. Now, when you talk about borrowing of old media from new media, I think every one of us knows what is happening in this space. That we're seeing instances where lots of instances where old media is borrowing more than it should from new media, and by that they're losing what their greater role is, and they have a very important role to play in this country, which is investigative, and we're not seeing that. So when we have, this is what was trending, it's the same thing that you'll see on the news, and so the mainstream media has been reduced to that, and it need not be reduced to that. We can still have what is trending today, but it doesn't need to set the agenda for 9 o'clock news. And that is now where we are at a point where we're wondering, okay, so what is the role of mainstream media in this country? If everything that is being done online is what we are seeing in the news, then what's the way forward? But there's a greater role that that traditional media can play and should continue playing, which means that we can all exist in this space. It doesn't mean that one has to exist at the expense of the other. Yes.
Mr. Omari, if we bring our blogs home, are they safe?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, the questions which have come up seems I need to have a special session in future on Kenik. Thank you for the interest. Let me try to answer them. Marketing of .ke using bloggers. We have an aggressive below the line and above the line marketing strategy this year. And the moment Makali becomes digital, we will immediately, because we are also using them. The moment they satisfy my colleague here on the left, you'll see us. And below the line, we'll use the bloggers, skaters. I think in December, the guys in town saw some skaters with our items. So that will be done, and the Bloggers Association will get a piece of cake of that. Now, cybersecurity is basically CA's responsibility. As we come in, if it's a .ke website and it has been compromised, the steps are 3. You write to CA, and they'll advise us, or you can write to me. I'll try to have arbitration, and then if nothing happens, we move to court, or you can come with a court order, and then I'll be able to follow the court order. About .ke being pulled down, and let me remove this myth. You know, .com came before .ke. That's why people are on .coms more than .k. .k is a country called top level domain. .com, no, .k is a country called top level domain. .com is a generic. But we all get our numbers from ICANN. We follow the same rules. Believe me, you joke on .com, somebody writes to CA, it will be pulled down. He's here. If you joke on Facebook, you write to CA, it will be pulled down. So it's not an issue of .ke. Whether on .org, .com, and so on, don't misbehave there, because if somebody complains, there is by a multilateral agreement within countries on cybersecurity because of terrorism and so on. So it's a serious issue. So you can't hide behind .coms and so on. I'll deal with .ke on a local level, but he will deal with the .coms and the Facebooks and so on. So that one, don't be, because the same thing, the same fear, I think, then also on .com should have the same fear. Cost of...
Just expand on that a little bit. I think the point is not on illegal content, but on content that may be inconvenient. Is Kenning free of political pressures where someone can say, I don't like the content on this .ke site, take it down? The inconvenient content, not the illegal content.
No, I don't get any pressure. But if you bring a court order, I have to obey it. You need a court order. If you come with a court order, I have to obey it. But I don't have that pressure, and I've never had that pressure. Because the country is keen to put everybody on .ke. So a cost of .ke being high, we are the second lowest domain in the world. Now, we sell to the registrars at 650 Kenya shillings, and we have a recommended price to them of 1,000 plus VAT. Currently, because of the price wars, it's going at 700. If you check on the web, you'll see some registrars are selling at 700 because of the price wars. Maybe the area which we need to pull our socks on, as the chair of the blogger says, we need to bring that information out. And as I said, the moment the small things are sorted out, we will market ourselves aggressively and put 1,000 will be the recommended price. You know, it's like Coca-Cola. They have a recommended price. But if you go to Hilton, you'll buy it at 400. But if you want the recommended price, go to the kiosk. So, no. There's a renewal fee of the same. Now, now, one finish the war with CA, then come to me. I'll deal. Thank you. One comment, I want to be philosophical about the bloggers. To me, it's an upcoming profession. Engineer knows that some time behind, quantity surveyors were part of them. But now they're, after some definition, quantity surveyors are a profession of their own. Their name now starts with QS. You'll see QS, so and so. But before, they were part of the engineering. It's the history of professions. To me, I'm seeing bloggers breaking off, not being babies of Macaulay as journalists. I'm seeing bloggers now morphing to a profession of its own. I'm looking at it as, in fact, this simmering is showing that something big is about to happen. So it always happens. A profession is formed out of a need. People complain over certain, then they put you into an outgroup, then the outgroup forms itself, puts regulation, then becomes a profession. So to me, I'm looking at it as bloggers being, in future, a professionals of themselves. And please continue making the rules so that in future, I don't know what title you'll take. Doctors have taken DR, these are ENG. BL, blogger so-and-so. Thank you.
Okay. No, I don't know.
Let's take another round of questions. We've got one on this side finally. And yeah, Chana there? Well, sorry, my brother. You had 3 questions, in fact. And one there. Okay, can you kick us off?
Okay, my name is Kachwanya, and I'm a big fan of Makali, but I think he's in denial of something. So, sorry. Of course, you have seen this, the journalists, bloggers war over years. We started back like 4 years ago or something like that, and then you could walk into a meeting and you ask, blogger is a company from abroad. Actually, I was asked by somebody from government when we went to Connected Kenya, and he was like, a blogger is a company from abroad which has started in Kenya or what? I mean, that was the kind of, not knowing what is it. Yeah, but okay, 2 things. To the CA guy, sorry. You said something that, because this question was meant to be for the guy from Attorney General office, but you said something that probably is important to this question. You said if somebody complained to you, you form the security agency about it. So the question I have here, because the thing we have seen is where people being arrested, in particular thing, and when you look at what they said, you'd say this is defamation, and sort of a civil case, not criminal case. So from what you say, it seems that you guys say this is criminal, you tell the security agency, then they arrest guys. And this has happened in the last few months. The undermining and all this nonsense. Sorry. But what I'm saying here is, if that's the case, how do you look at what people are saying online? Is it under criminal or civil? Because when you're bringing the security agency, why don't you tell that guy to just go to Kate and say, you know what, I've been defamed, then the court come in, and then maybe somebody is, penalized for what he said if he can't prove it. And for me, that would help than this arrest, which at the end we take it to criminal, and it's not even helping. Nobody has been, okay, Wadi was jailed. Wadi was jailed, but if you follow it closely, it probably was a forced thing. So that's one. The other thing is the disclosure that somebody, with Eric, talked about earlier. And Jerry said about the rules, it's not there. So we have the draft, the big have a draft of the disclosure for, for the members. But because there's no specific rule for that, so what we did was to say, this is the draft, put it up. But we never said, we never put it to the extent that say, it's a must, because members had to decide to say, you know what, because there's some who said, you go to the shop. I remember when we had this meeting, there's some who said, you go to the shop and you look at somebody who is doing this as a professional. In a way, the money issue has to come in. But how do you do it? So I have a banner on my site, yeah? And basically that banner is paid for. But the content, the editorial content is strictly different. But then there's, of course, the political angle of, where guys are paid to defame guys. Actually, the last election, there are people who are paid not to write, just keep quiet. So these things do happen, but if the law could be there where you have to disclose if you are paid, yeah, but I guess it's issue of training and talking to the commercial guys instead. Yeah, but then journalists themselves, Makali himself, most of you are paid underground. So, brown envelope. Did blogger came up with that word, brown envelope? No, journalist. But anyway, my question is,
yeah, let's get the question. Huh? Thank you. Let's, I think we have 2 questions on this side. Please tell us who you are and who you're directing the question to.
Yeah, my name is Nick Kanali. I'm one of those anonymous bloggers. I blog about tech and politics. And first, I'd like to agree with the engineer that indeed blogging is an upcoming profession. I went to journalism school. I did online journalism as part of my units. And I was taught blogging as a topic. And so that's why I'd like to disagree with Makali that we as bloggers, we're trying to check to dominate the space being occupied by the mainstream media. So my question is a journalist just afraid of bloggers? Because possibly, maybe we tend to do more than what the journalists are doing. So are journalists just scared of us? That's my question.
Thank you. And one last question, yes?
Question will go to the gentleman from Kenya.
Please tell us who you are and
Sam, I work with techmoran.com. Sam Wakoba from techmoran.com. My question goes to Kenrick. I want to know how hard it is for Kenrick to work with the register of companies to, like every time someone registers a company, they help them to get a domain name and etc. I don't know, what's the process? How hard is it for you guys to work together?
Yeah, maybe we can start with engineer this time and come back this way. Yes.
So thank you very much, Bwana Kajwana. I think you've took me back to the issue of our relationship with the security agencies. I said us as a CA, really, we are more of just giving technical information, really. So when somebody comes to report to us, because we have no capacity to do the investigation or even to tell whether it's criminal or civil. So really, we are passing the technical information, and the police, really, they have also a way of deciding whether it's criminal. There's the DPP, there's a process. So what I said is we are more or less the trusted. I think our role really is to be a trusted source. I think that's the greatest role we are playing in terms of technical information and in terms of liaison with other, like the Facebook, the Twitter, in case we need to advise for a site to be taken down. So, but the law has to follow its course. It's not arbitrary. You cannot just say, Kajwana, tomorrow you will go in. No, we cannot decide that. Then the issue of disclosure, I think, was addressed very well by Njeri. And I think it's an input. And as I emphasize, really, for me, really, if you work on your code of conduct and address the issues of, because for me, really, I look at this in terms of content. And you can borrow something from the existing laws, law of defamation, the NCIC Act, the Kika Act in terms of offensive content, and the issue of fairness, of, right to reply. You can borrow some of those practices from and into your code of conduct. And then I think the other question, I think Kenrick will be.
On the MOU, I'm pleased to inform you we have a committee, an MOU with the Registrar of Companies. We have a committee in place. We are telling the Registrar of Company a domain is like a PO box, because when you register a company, you have to say PO box this and so on. So to reduce the issue of cyber squatting and people's domains being registered, we are telling them if a company, sorry, I will use Makali's example so much because, so if Makali Enterprises is registered, the MOU, which is yet to be signed, we are telling them also Makali should register www.makalienterprise.co.ke as part of the registration process. The MOU is yet to be signed, but it has been finalized. We have been discussing it since October last year, and we want to forward it to the Registrar of Companies, and of course they have to take it to the Attorney General to do his job on it. Let's hope when it goes through, it will be like Rwanda, because Rwanda, that's what happens there. So your concern is already being addressed. Thank you.
My colleague there now, that I know there's a blogger who is a journalist. You know, it is not that, you're an exception. Let us put it that way. Because, like I said initially, every one of us is a blogger. There can be no way you can discriminate against me and call yourself bloggers minus me. I'm a potential blogger. I'm just not notorious enough or frequent enough in using that space. That is the only distinction I drew. So if you are a journalist and and journalists have, they used to, there is something called self-publishing. This is which blogging is all about. So journalists can self-publish, it's like, it is the selfie version, writing, selfie version of, of writing. It's the writing version of a selfie. So anybody can do it. And if you perfect your art of doing it and you perfect the art of using that platform much better than most, then you achieve that distinction and then you can style yourself as a blogger. Anything else, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, you'll have a long day to prove to me. So we'll have that continuous conversation of distinction between journalism and the other. And I hope that really, I'm not as optimistic as my friends, including Omari, that one of these days, blogging will become a profession. The use of that word profession needs an inquiry. Because a profession is an activity that is governed by rules and standards and has a skill of a certain level of knowledge attached to it. Okay? How are you going to achieve that for blogging universally? To make it a profession? That answer in the next forum. But
thank you, and
but for now, I just wanted to ask my friend here why he's a journalist and then he's blogging anonymously. Why? Journalism is that you publish and you can own up to it and stand up to that test of veracity, of validity. Credibility comes into question. The people who hit from the forest and throw, anonymously cannot qualify to be called journalists. You can only use that anonymity when circumstances require it, either because of danger or sensitivity or pursuit, reprisals, things like that. But you cannot say you are running a website or a blog and then you are anonymous. How? Then you fail the first test of journalism.
Okay, so this is the start of a long discussion. We've reached the end of the Bloggers Forum today. Next time, everyone come on time. Yeah, one last round of questions. Let me ask my panelists. One last round of questions?
But comments.
Yeah, I'll give you a chance to, but you see, this always happens. At the beginning, no one wants to ask questions. Then at the end, everyone wants to ask questions. So our panelists have been very good. Our guests, they are all here on time. We need to respect that and end on time. So I'll ask each one of them to share one thing that we, as the iHub community, as the blogging community, can do to help them in their work, or one way that we can partner together with what you do at work. So you're here at the heart of technology in Kenya. What's one thing that the people in this room can do for the Communications Authority of Kenya?
Okay, from my end, I think I've appreciated the venue, the sitting. And really, for me, the message I want to leave really is we are just talking about technology, and whatever rules apply to us in the natural relationship should really apply in the technology online. So that's why I'm saying we don't need any new rules. The laws are there. What we need is just awareness. I think I'm challenging Beck to really create awareness so that we have responsible content from the side of CA. And CA is available to facilitate, for example, its role in terms of being a trusted source.
Thank you.
My concern is, as I started, what I would like the bloggers, future BL so and so professionals to do is to participate in the future internet management. As I said, we are having a local, but we are going to have an international problem. People are participating on how the internet should be managed, the INA transition. So I'm expecting the chair in the next meeting of June. I should meet her in Tunisia, making a serious presentation from the Bloggers Association of Kenya and saying the position of the bloggers on how the internet should be managed in future. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have had a very beneficial relationship between Bake and the iHub. And that is something we see happening a lot more as we go forward. And I don't know, maybe if I'm at liberty to disclose this, but we know that there are plans by the iHub to have a center that I don't know if I should disclose this. Okay, we know that there are plans by the iHub to have a studio, and that is one of the ways that we are seeking to have a deeper working relation, because we have the content, the tools are there, and we hope that that is something that is going to work a lot more. I mentioned that we normally have trainings, and that is one way of separating the wheat from the chaff. So by having more people going into blogging, whether or not it's going to be a profession is another story altogether. But having as many people creating quality content about this country is important. And one of the ways that we are doing that is carrying out training around the country. And one of the ways that we can better work with the iHub is through the BRIC. And that is something that we are currently pursuing. We are talking to the individuals who are managing that to see that work better. And so I believe that the future is bright for content creation in this country. And let us not get stuck up or hung up on blogging as just being text. The digital space has opened up, and soon internet will be affordable. I think you can sort of fill up the rest. Thank you.
My final word is that you guys continue punching holes in journalism. We need that, because on this side, we are very conservative. There are things we will not do. We rely on you to do those things. But, a sequel to that is continue also developing some sort of partnerships with what we call the mainstream media. Share information. Because if the objective is to take society forward and to help it, to open it up more, sometimes because of the dent of credibility that bloggers are suffering, if you share with the mainstream some of that information that comes to you, you may have, you'll still be advancing that goal, and that partnership could actually end up with taking you from this side to this side of the mainstream. You can cross the bridge. They're not entirely distinct and separate. They can be, they have a relationship, as I said, of kid brother and the other one. But the final thing is that, at least for integrity purposes, we must seek to be known. On your blog, attempt to put a policy, editorial policy statement on your blog. Tell us that you believe in these values in your practice as a blogger, or in that publishing which you are doing in that limited space. Some charter or some statement of integrity that we can trust what you're saying, so that you're not doing this in vain. And avoid being a blogger for rent. Under any circumstance. Don't become a mercenary who is paid to fight another cause or to, do fitina communication. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much to our distinguished panel today, Engineer Burnett from the Communication Authority of Kenya, Mr. Abdallah Omari of Kenink, Jerry Wangari of Bake, and David Makali of Citizen TV. A big thank you to you, our audience, for all your questions and your interactions. Like I say, this is the beginning of a long conversation. Thank you to the iHub team, to the techies handling the live stream, and everybody watching online. And yeah, I think there's some refreshments over here for you, so don't run away immediately. Sit, interact, talk to one another, and yeah, hopefully we'll do this again soon. Thanks a lot, and give everyone a round of applause. Thank you.
numbers.
She mobilized.